Welcome back to Stress and Purpose in Life. This podcast is for you guys that wants to live fully and lead and thrive as much as you can. My name is Stina. I'm your host, and today we're going to dive into the subject of resilience and for schools and in organizations, right, DR?
Yes, absolutely. For organizations, you bet.
Yeah, and what is then resilience? I mean, what is that? Some people talk about it having like a life experience. Somebody talk about like it's a part of your. It must be part of it, like your DNA. And what is resilience? Something is something that we can learn, or is it something that we are born with? What do you think about that? I'm going to introduce you in a moment, but just a quick check.
Well,
What do you think?
so character is something that you develop. You're not born with it. You develop that over years. Well, I had this conversation with many people, and well, people my age, and I'm a little older than you are. My age, remember when we started school, the very first thing the teacher taught was respect. Because if she didn't have respect, it was absolute chaos. No other way to look at it. It was chaos.
Yeah.
And so what was the penalty? Well, you had to lay on your blanket for 30 minutes, or you couldn't play with the other kids, or you had to sit over in a corner. I don't know, whatever it was. But the point was you had to obey Mrs. Whatever it was, because if you didn't, it was not going to be pretty. So you learned respect right away. And that was the very first thing we learned. And then going through school, we started learning all these other things like kindness and even love, respect, honesty, all these things we learned there. And then through through other organizations, we also began to learn things like gratitude and some of those things that are taught probably more in belief side, but there's a lot of traits that come from family, just family. But there's traits that should be taught in school. So we
Yeah.
bundled those and we said 25 traits. There's 25 traits. The core traits are respect, responsibility, resilience, kindness, and love.
Yeah.
If you've got those five core traits, you can go anywhere. You can do anything. You can become anything. If you understand those things, practice those things daily, you will become successful. Now, if you understand these other things, can you imagine being those things without, for example, honesty?
Yeah.
Whoa. So you're gonna be a nice guy and you're gonna be kind to everybody, but you're gonna be a crook. I don't think that works really well. I think these things go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So
So
go ahead.
yeah, and I think we're gonna those traits is really important, and we're gonna dive into them step by step. But today we're gonna talk about resilience. So
Okay.
so we're gonna talk about this subject of okay, how do you make future the young next generation as our future most resilient leaders? And actually, I think I want to start off because I know I need to introduce you now because everybody's so curious of who you are, the people that don't know you. So, but before I do that, I would like
Okay.
to have
Go ahead.
an actual definition of what resilience actually is, and it's just like springing back or in physical science, the elasticity and the power of returning to the original shape. And that's very interesting because I mean we are in a future that is constantly changing and being flexible in that future. And how do we do that? And that is actually what resilience is about, according to the definition. But what do you think, DR? Is that
Well,
the proper
first of
definition?
all, I don't think being resilient means that you return to the actual shape.
No.
For example, let's say that you're a harried business person, male, female, doesn't make any difference, but you're just harried and things are going on, and somebody comes in and says, "Guess what?" This, by the way, this is a true story. Guess what? Your operating system just failed. All of your customers are gone. Uh, what? Say what? And you realize you just lost everything. So now what happens? Well, you
No,
can
then you can't go back to the original. Then you have to find something new.
I mean, even if you take the attitude, oh, suck it up, Buttercup, or be strong. You can be strong. You can get past this. And so, yeah, trying to get past that, you're still not going to return to the original shape where you were happy, you thought everything was working. You're going to probably be, in my opinion, better. At least in my experience, every challenge I've ever had in my life, every challenge, whether it's losing a lot of money, a failure in business, failure in a relationship, whatever it is, I've always come back stronger and better and more open to even more challenges than I was before.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
you have to be resilient to do that. So how do you be resilient?
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this whole nature of resilient, because resilient is much greater than just being a tough guy,
Yeah,
right?
and we're gonna dive into that just in a moment, because now we're talking for 6 minutes, and I have still not introduced you. So, and I
Oh,
think what is the best way to do that? I think it's better that you introduce yourself, because I know you. You're a top leader. You have been on CEO of many different companies, and now your mission is something, well, totally different. I don't know. What do you think? But I think it's better to you, for your end, from your end, to say, okay, why did you end up where you are? And just tell me about your story a little bit for the viewers that don't know who you are.
okay. Well, first of all, you had a hard time reducing the 35 pages I gave you of my bio, and you couldn't reduce that to a paragraph, right? I'm just kidding you.
I
Just
think it's better that you do that.
well, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 21. That was an accident, and I had my first business when I was 21. Sold it when I was 22. My second business when I was 23, sold it when I was 26, and just kept going from there. Uh, I was in Vietnam. I didn't go to college right away. I went to Vietnam, and when I came back and started my businesses, I was speaking, and someone said you should go to college, and I said, yeah, I really don't have time. I got a kid. I have a family. I have a mother and father-in-law that's now living with me. I can't do that, and so I finally went to college. And I completed 4 years and two, but I kept doing businesses. I either started them, or I purchased them, or I took them over for somebody who was great at what they did, but they really didn't understand how to run a business. So that's what I've done. So 30 businesses later, I'm now at Tiny Tails Land, which is where what I'm doing now. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, hey, you think you'd be doing something like this? Absolutely not. In 2021, I was trying to retire for the 10th time.
Uh-huh.
And my friend of mine who worked for me at three of my companies, he says, DR, become a writer. I said, a writer? Why would I become a writer? I said, do you know what my professor said about me? Do you know what my high school teacher said about me in writing? They said, it's a good thing you can speak because you can't write. Okay, then. He said to me, now, by the way, this is an author of 46 books, all on cameras. He lectures around the world. He's
Mm.
associate professor at MIT. He's an amazing fellow. Anyway, he says to me, TR, you can write. You've written tens of thousands of emails. I know I got my share of them. And he says, you've written contracts all over the world, which is true. And
Mm.
I've seen some of you just general writing, like in brochures and so forth. You can write. And well, okay, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah,
So 12 months later, I'd written 9 books,
that's
and
amazing.
I kind of enjoyed it. And so um, I got into a group called Medium, and Medium is 23 million people who write. So I got hooked up with a guy in Arizona who happened to become a friend of mine, and we started writing these 100-word stories,
Oh
and
yeah.
they were boring as all get up. The deal was they give you a word and you had to say, okay, I have to include sundown in my 100-word story again. Okay, that was boring. And he said to me one day, he says, why don't we write for children? I said, well, what do we write? Just a fun story? He said, well, we
Mm.
could do that, but he says, I think kids need character. I said, character? Now that's interesting. So we did some research and found out that other than an organization called Character Counts out of Duke University, uh, there's nothing being taught around the world on character,
Yeah.
not any age level. So from preschool to kindergarten and through the elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, nobody's teaching character, at least the full set of them. You
Mm.
might find a particular course on one subject. In fact, a good friend of mine owns a company that she just focuses on joy,
Yeah.
and joy is one of the 25. So she focuses on joy and she does an outstanding job because there's so many aspects to it.
Yeah.
But any one of these character traits become important. And so we decided to form a company.
Of course.
Here we are. So this is my 30th company.
And
And
it is the one of the most important companies, I guess, for the next generation to really learn about character, because it's such an important subject at the moment, and it will be more in the future as well. So it's really, you have something here that is really great. I really am amazed by it. So I'm great to have you on the show.
thank you.
So if we start off by the questions, I have a, when we talk about resilience, what, I mean, you talked about it a lot now, still, we 10 minutes into the show, but what is your first image or feeling when you get to, when you talk about resilience? Because you said about your, how you find resilience when growing up. What was resilience for you when you grew up? And how has your resilience evolved over time, do you think?
Well, I started out as a homeless kid, and I went from there. I was in a school that was all Hispanic. I was the only white kid, blue eyes and blonde hair, besides my sister.
Yeah.
And so we had to become a little resilient because we got beat down all the time. People, you're this, you're that, you'll always be poor, whatever, all these different things. So we were always overcoming those challenges.
Yeah.
And then we moved from homelessness to up a level, we went to poor. And when we got to poor, we could afford a really poor apartment in a really poor part of town, which happened to be all African American here in San Diego, which meant they were all African American, and that was it. And we didn't have any other choice. So when we went to school, we were the only kids that weren't.
Mm.
So we learned about discrimination. We learned about being sectioned out, and we learned about all kinds of things. And then I learned about gangs. People came to me and said, well, you're a big tall white kid. When I went to middle school, I was 5'10", and so we want you on our gang. Well, I don't want to be in a gang. I don't want to sell tickets, and I don't want to do prostitution. I don't want to do drugs. I don't want to do any of those things. And they said, really? Okay, beat him up. And
Oh.
I'd get beaten up,
Oh my God.
typically a couple times a week.
So you built a lot of resilience during your years, DR.
A lot of resilience because I could have just got beaten down and said, okay, let's go with the flow. I could have done that. But I had this mission in my head that says, I'm not going to continue to be poor. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to be better than what my parents were. And my parents, God rest their soul, they died at an early age, but I was not going to do that. I was going to be what I wanted to be. And
That's good.
I had that goal in mind, and that's what I stuck to through school. And then when I was in high school, I was still in the minority, and so I started playing football, and I was extremely good at it. And so I thought I'd become a professional player. Well, I had full scholarships to places, but I decided to go in the war. Now, there's a chance to learn resilience
Yeah,
because
of
I'm
course.
telling
Oh my
you,
God.
everybody beats you down. You know, in
Yeah.
the Marine Corps, they have this saying, you're lower than whale poop, which is at the bottom of the ocean. Now, if that doesn't beat you down, I don't know what does, right? So you got to spring back from that. And
Yeah.
in a lot of companies today, new employees are meant to feel like, well, you're an outsider. You haven't been here long enough. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't
Yeah.
don't don't open your mouth.
Mm.
Well, wait, I was hired to do. Don't open your mouth. You don't know enough yet. And they just keep beating you down, beating you down, beating you down. So you've got to figure out a way how to be resilient. Well,
Yeah.
it's our philosophy that these 25 traits interplay. In other words, if you don't have a group of people around you that love you, the chance of you being resilient are really slim, which is one of the reasons people in a homeless condition are so hard to get out of being homeless. Besides the mental issues, they're so hard because they don't have a support system.
No.
There's nobody to help them, right?
Yeah.
So you and I go to work. We have a really bad day. Somebody said, you don't know what you're talking about. Da, 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 da. That project you did, it just failed. You're bad. You're bad. I don't know why we hired you. Okay, I got to come back from that. Well, when I come home and my support system says, that was an experience, it's not you.
Yeah.
And you are loved and you are appreciated.
Yeah.
Well, it's easier to come back from that and
Of
to
course.
regain who you are.
Yeah. It is balance there, because if the work weigh you down, you have to have something there at home that keeps you up.
You bet. You've got to have
It's so
something
important.
where you bet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So resilience isn't just being the tough guy. It's not. It's
No.
absolutely not. And it's not. I hate this expression. My father used to use it. I I actually used it at one time until I understood differently. But I used to say to my little kids when they fall down and get hurt, I'd say, "Suck it up, Buttercup. Just get up and get going."
Mm.
And one day I was listening to myself and I said, what is that teaching? What am what am I
Yeah.
doing? And
Pushing
I
through, and not showing weakness, just pushing through and being the hard guy.
yeah, yeah. And I
Yeah.
said, what is that teaching them? Nothing. And so I changed it completely. When
That's good.
something happened and they got hurt or they failed in some sort, we'd sit down and we'd talk about it and say, well, is that really you or is that just a circumstance or what happened? Let's talk about that. Well,
Yeah.
Dad, I did this and I did that and this happened and that happened. Okay, well, great. But it happened maybe because you didn't have enough knowledge.
Mm.
Can you see that? Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. If I had more knowledge, I would have maybe been better at it. Okay. Well, what about sports? I had a daughter who was great at sports, and she failed one time really badly. And I talked to her and I said, this is not you. You are so driven. This is just an issue that happened. You
Mm.
came across some people that were better than you. Now, what does that tell you? That doesn't mean that you're bad. It doesn't mean that you don't know what you're doing. It just means you found somebody better than you. So what can you do with that?
Yeah.
So you can say to yourself, well, I can train more, I can learn more, I can practice more, I can do all these things to overcome that issue.
Yeah.
That's overcoming and resilience.
Yeah.
There it is.
And I'm into that as well. Learn teaching and everything in the early beginning, and how you cope with everything like this, with resilience in a situation. But we're talking about both adults and also young people. But this tiny tail lens has to do with third and fourth graders, right?
Right.
What?
We're focusing on second, third, and fourth, and specifically third.
Yeah.
The
And
reason
then
we
what? Yeah.
go ahead.
And then I was thinking about, how do we teach resilience that early on? Because you told me yourself that it's quite urgent today, but you need to have some kind of life experience. But how can we? I mean, you gave a good example here with your daughter, but how do you have some specific tools in this method of resilience, in this tiny tail land concept, that is specific, or is it just asking questions and support systems? So what is more that you can teach a third and fourth grader to be resilient or learn about resilience?
Well, it's all of those things, but
Yeah,
all of the 25 character traits go hand in hand to support resilience. That's the one trait that you have to have a ton of support with.
yeah,
So
yeah,
the other 24 items in that list, and I've got the list here on my screen, but let's go through them. Adaptability. You certainly need that for resilience, don't you? And appreciation. As others appreciate you, you go, maybe I'm not that person they say I am. Okay.
mm,
Compassion. As others give you compassion, it makes you feel differently about those people that put you down.
yeah,
So there's that. Cooperation. Others help you overcome what you just experienced.
yeah.
So that's one of the traits. Courage, creativity, curiosity, empathy, fairness, flexibility, forgiveness, generosity, gratitude, honesty, initiative, joy, kindness, love, mindfulness, patience, politeness, respect, resilience,
Yeah.
responsibility.
But they
And
are all correlated with each other in some way.
they do.
They
They
can't
all
stand
work.
alone. Right.
So, what we do in the third grade level is we try and teach each of those things. We have a lesson book where they have 36 lessons and they go through the 25, plus they go through the five core again. And we have a couple special lessons that don't really have anything to do with character traits, but they have to do with life.
Yeah.
And so we run them through them. And then when they learn it, they have a sheet, a task list. When they learn it, the teacher signs off or the parent signs off, and they get a little sticker that says, "Congratulations, you understand kindness. You understand gratitude. You understand respect," whatever it happens to be.
Yeah.
But that's how you teach. And the reason we selected that grade is you may not be aware, but in that particular grade, a child's mind is so open that they can learn up to four languages. Four languages.
Yeah.
I know three.
Yeah.
I know American, English, and the bottom line. That's it. Those are all I know. I
That's
think
a lot.
maybe a couple of them are repeats, but I'm not going to.
Okay. Yeah. But they are really they are in that age that they are really snapping everything up very fast, and then you have to really try to get into their subconscious to really get
Yeah.
this DNA right. Is that what your core is like? Making it in your DNA to be like this and be have that character and the traits in you when you grow up.
But I don't think it's DNA. I think it becomes part of your DNA when
Yeah,
you learn it. It absolutely becomes part of your DNA because it affects
that's great.
all your life decisions after that. Once you learn kindness and cultivate it and use it every day, it becomes part of your DNA. Yeah.
Yeah,
When you look at somebody, you don't go, "Okay, thanks." You say, "Oh, hey, thanks very much for doing that." That's a whole different approach, isn't it?
yeah,
So it's that kind of thing. And it's that way with each of the character traits. Once you learn that, then that's what you do. As a young man, I learned to open doors for women and older people. I learned to let others go first. So I remember I did a story early on about a boy and a girl that were playing, and they said, "Let's go get a drink." And they rushed to the fountain, and the boy was there first, and he was there waiting for her. And she got to the fountain. She says, "Aren't you going to get a drink?" And he says, "No, you first."
oh, okay, yeah, that's kindness.
See, it's kind of how you teach that lesson.
Yeah,
So we do that in all the things that we do, and the 25 lessons just get taught over and over and over and over again. We have charts that go on the wall. We have all kinds of things to remind people what these things are, and they're so important.
yeah, it is.
When we talk about resilience is the one thing that I think so much of our youth is missing right now. A lot of the kids that I see in 20s, 30s, even some of the early 40s, uh, they don't wear well. In other words, if there's a setback, they don't spring back. They
No.
don't have any resilience in them. They don't have any depth to them,
Yeah.
and or reserve is another way to put it. They don't have any reserve. It's just all what they have, and you
Yeah.
take away that little bit that they have, and they don't know what to do. They don't know
No.
what's next, and it's because they didn't learn these things. And let me tell you something. We talked about respect first. Respect was taught first because it eliminated chaos, right?
Yeah.
So when there's respect, you say, stop, I stop because I respect you. You say, go, I go because I respect you. You say, sit down, I sit down because I respect you.
Yeah.
But suddenly, when you don't learn respect, then you don't do what other people say. You don't appreciate what other people say.
Mm.
It's okay to question what they say. Why are you asking me to stop? That's okay. It's all right to say that.
Yeah.
But in that particular environment, you still have to stop because you respect that person.
Yeah.
So we learn that first. And in order to be resilient, you have to first learn some of these other things. And I think that's what the kids are missing. I
Yeah.
sincerely believe that. And if we're going into chaos, and believe me, we're headed into in this chaos.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot of uncertainty. And
They don't know what to do. They don't
no.
have a foundation to really navigate through all of this chaos.
And that is actually one of the main. Uh, uh, I was like planning this before with the resilience. What was one main issues with the uncertainty in the future, that we don't know what is going to happen with the AI and what's going to happen with life. I mean, it's going to change a lot of things in life in the future, and being resilient is one of the core main factors to be survive that and live through that. And that's what one of my missions actually, and that's why I really am so passionate about that subject, just what you're saying, that because I think that is the, and to learn resilience at a young age is yeah, it's spot on. I think it's really brilliant. We really need that in the future. So
We do. We
yeah.
do. When I was, or not when I was in, but in the early 1980s, 1980 actually specifically, personal computers came out. Now I learned to program on an enormous IBM 360, which took up half of a building. It seemed like, anyway. But PCs came out, and as soon as PCs came out, people started saying, "Oh my gosh, they're going to take our jobs. They've got PCs that they can do. They don't need two of us. One person will do. Oh, everything's going to fall apart." I
Yeah.
remember one of the key things was I had a paper salesman tell me, he says, I'm going to go bankrupt. He says, people won't use paper. Well, I should have bought stock in paper because they used more paper than they ever did.
The way paper free life from now on, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And so what happened with PCs is it's actually created a ton of new jobs. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
the amount of jobs that it created. Now, I'm 78 years old, and I can tell you there are people my age and younger who, if you said, why don't you get your computer and take care of it? They go, computer? Oh, I don't have a computer. You don't have a computer? I don't even know how to turn one on. And they're proud of that.
Oh.
That's like saying, I'm an idiot and I'm proud of it.
Yeah, because you have to go through it. It's the same with AI. You have to be on it now and know what it is to
That's
survive in the
exactly.
future. Yeah.
AI right now is in the very beginning stages, and it's easy to learn. Easy to learn. The AI I use, for example, I call him Buddy, and he has learned so much about me, my family, my company, uh, balance sheets that I'm reviewing, companies that I've reviewed, and so on and so forth. I can say to him, I was thinking about XYZ company, and I wondered, is this really an issue on their bottom line? Get an answer. Now, AI is going to provide us with lots of opportunities. My gosh, if I had AI 20 years ago, I could have accomplished so much more. And people don't realize, they think it's a challenge. So, how do I overcome that?
Yeah.
There's no resilience. How do I overcome that? Well, you overcome it by facing it head on, get in there and learn it.
Yeah, I agree. Because
You-
I have I think about the employees and organizations and what are we going to do with all the people if we're not needing people anymore. What are they going to do? Well, they're going to find something else to do. They're going to find something else to take their time, whatever that is, but it's going to be solved in a great way. I'm so certain about that. So
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely. When one thing stops, another starts.
yeah,
It's
it is. Yeah.
just,
And
yeah, yeah.
so if we go through a little bit more about the tiny lands, and also we're going to talk more about resilience, but I'm just curious because people perhaps don't know what that is, and I mean I know what it is. It's really exciting. But if we think about it regarding resilience and how we should redesign schools and communities to achieve resilience as one of the traits. If you use tiny land, what is your answer to that? What is the actual
Well,
solution?
on Tiny Tales Land, we designed it so that it's an adventure land for kids. Okay, it's also an adventure land for parents. Now, you're a parent. We've talked about this. I'm a parent. I have 6 kids, 17 grandchildren, and 7 great grandchildren. And I know that reading stories to children matters. It absolutely matters. So we have 500 plus stories there that you can read that take 43 seconds. You read this little story and then you ask a reflection question. Let me ask you, Helga, what did you learn from this? Have you ever done this in school? Has this ever happened to you? Are you that kind of person? Do you know what a real example of that is? Can you share me the last time that you did that? All those questions are possible, and still you wouldn't have spent 2.5 minutes with your child.
No.
Now, that's part of what we do. We also have things like, on my bucket list at one point in time, I thought I'd be a climber, and I thought about Mount Everest. And well, I'm
What?
not a climber and I never made Mount Everest, but
Don't you
you
have
can,
it on your bucket list still, DR?
no, it's not. It's
Okay.
not. But you can go on our website and stand on the top of Mount Everest. How about that?
That's great.
So there's a lot of things, a lot of activities that you can do on our website. Now there's games. One of the things that's so tough with kids is, what do you do next? It's never ending. This and that. Mom, I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do this. I want to do that. And then how do you teach things? We came up with the help of a lot of research, we came up with a simple jar game. Okay. It's a game. Let's call it kindness. Let's work with kindness.
Yeah.
So you can take a simple jar or a glass or a big container like a pickle jar or something, and you put a label on it that says kindness. Now, every time your daughter does something that's kind, you write a little note and you said, she did da 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 da, and you put it in the jar. Now you get her aware of kindness, and she says, "Mommy did this, and I saw this," and she writes it down.
Yeah.
She puts it in the jar. And if you've got a larger family, Bobby did this, Dad did this, all those things happen, and you put it in the jar. Then one night during the week, you have a special family meal. You pull that jar out and you pull things out and say, I'd like to recognize Johnny. You know, he did something really neat. He worked with sister on a project when he didn't have to. He was going to go out and do something else, but he did take time for her.
Mhm.
That's being kind. And I think we should all recognize that what he did was kind. Thank you.
Yeah, that is so amazing because you need to have that in organizations because you always and of course in families, but you always see the negative things. You always remember the bad things that happens. If you have that jar, I mean, I'm going to take that to my family straight away. And I think that we need that because we need to really see each other and really respond, teach, I mean, practice this. You practice it. Practice
Yeah.
to be kind when doing that. So it's a really great example. Thank you,
Well,
dear.
we have it on the website for every trait, by the way. Everyone, honesty, kindness, gratitude. We got them all. But
Grace.
you said something just now that we should all think about. Do we really see the person that we're talking to, or are we just talking at them like this? We just
Yeah.
talk, or do we actually see that they're a person with hopes and dreams and goals and objectives that they're trying to do, and
Yeah.
that they have a family behind them, and that they had a troubled past, or they have a great future, or whatever? Do we really know that?
Yeah.
We don't.
No. And
We
it's
don't.
very important to be reminded of because I was going to ask about this because the aim is to, with the resilience trait, it has to do with making future resilient leaders. And to become a future resilient leader, you need to see people. You need to be able to see people. So it's really, really, yeah, I agree with you. It's really important.
One of my favorite characters in Tiny Tales Land is called Larry the Listener. And he's a rabbit, but instead of just having ears that are this big, his ears are like this big. Okay. He listens. Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
And that's the first way that you begin to understand people is you listen.
Yeah.
You listen. Take the time to listen. Your life is not so busy or so important that you can't take 1 minute to listen to somebody.
Yeah.
I think
And yeah, and it's really important because you said, I mean, being a good listener, it has to do with having the time to sit back and really respond to what you're seeing and everything. And then all the traits is really important because if you don't have all the traits, because the next question I actually have is if you see a person that has some of the traits that you, but they don't feel loved, they don't know how to feel respect or give respect, or don't have the support system, how can they still be resilient, or how can they develop that, or do they need all the traits to if they fail one trait before, for example, having no support system at home or at work or at school, how do
then
you become a resilient person anyway then, do you think? Will
then
this system work?
it becomes trial and error, Stina. It
Yeah.
becomes trial and error at that point. You like when I was a little kid, nobody was supporting me or even knew how to support me, and I failed or somebody knocked me on my butt. Uh, I got up, but I knew what I was looking for. I was looking for somebody to say it's okay. I was looking for this. I was looking for that. At some point, some of us realize that if we're looking for that, others are as well.
Yeah.
Now that is self-realization in a nutshell right there.
No.
Now, there is no real easy path to resilience if you don't have these other traits. Now, if we're talking about how do I become more resilient? Ah, be better with the character traits, understand kindness better, understand responsibility better, understand forgiveness better, understand gratitude better. When you understand those things, then setbacks become, well, that didn't work. Okay,
No.
next.
Yeah. And that is because I was thinking about that as well, because mostly you see becoming resilient has to do with having trauma in life or having a really bad experience in life.
Right.
But if you don't have that, you still can be resilient and learn from your mistakes, for example.
Yes.
But if you don't have the kinds and everything, of course you have to you have to be able to reflect on how my life is to become resilient, because to get gratitude from being through a difficult situation, or if you are in a difficult situation right now, it's really difficult, but you have to really practice that. So I really imagine that many people will have great use of these teachings that you have.
I think what's interesting is that if we did a poll, we just went out on the street and did a poll, let's take a sample of 20 people. It would be my best guess, based on my life experiences, that more than half of them wouldn't know how to overcome a setback
Yeah.
and be resilient. They don't even know that that's what you call it. Overcoming something, they don't even know that that's resilient.
No, I know.
Of them are that way.
But it's becoming a new, more and more known word. I think that people use it more often. So
it is. It's one of those things that people my age call one of those nouveau words. It's so new. It's been around forever, but
yeah,
now we're finally getting around to
and
using
we
it.
understand what we need.
Now we're going to use resilience. Okay, got it. But yeah, it's one of those things. But you know, if you think about things, education overcomes everything. And if you learn more about how to be resilient, you'll have more of an interest in character traits. If you learn more about how to be resilient, you'll look for those things around you that support you in case you need their help being resilient.
I agree. Absolutely. So what do you think now? If we are in a changing environment, we have climate crisis, AI, we talk about AI, and then global unrest and everything that has to do with digitalization, everything that has to do with life changing. And then we have people that are not becoming resilient leaders. What is the effect of that, do you think, in the future for the next generation? I think talk about that.
Dangerous, damning. It's just awful. I'll give you a classic case. It started back probably in the 70s or 80s, when people said, "Oh, global warming is just BS. It's just bull." You know, what are they talking about? They don't know what they're talking about. Well, of course, they didn't know what they were talking about. Now it's pretty much accepted. There may be 10 or 15% of the people out there that have still think global warming is weird or whatever, because they're not educated. That's why they think that. They're not educated. Now, those people that acknowledge that there's global warming, there's a huge handful of them that says, it's global warming. What are you going to do? You can't do anything about that. Are you kidding me? We already damaged the globe. That's it. We're done. That's it. Well, what do you think? How long is it going to last? Well, I just hope it lasts my generation. I'm good with that. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, some people think like that, I think.
Then there's a whole bunch of people, and I just saw a video on this morning. There's a whole bunch of people that are looking at all these products that reduce the carbon footprint even further. Products we can use that are still fire retardants, products we can use that will still move us forward, but reduce that carbon footprint.
Yeah.
We're trying to make an effort. Some countries don't get it. Some countries do. Those that do are leading the way, and they're trying to make a difference. But there are still leaders that go, what the hell's this global warming? Are you kidding me? I'll tell you what's more important than global warming. How many cops we have on the street. That's more important than global warming. Well, it may be, but if that's your only focus, then we're in trouble. You need to be a little more global than that in your thinking.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to happen in the future. If people aren't educated, if they're not thinking, if they don't have their eyes open, it's going to be a problem. It just is. I see so many of my peers that have gotten to this age and their minds have been so closed that when new things come around, they just go, huh? No, doesn't affect me. I'm okay.
Uh, but you have to be flexible and adaptable in the future.
You
Need to.
do. You absolutely do. And when you come across these things that you don't know, think of it as a setback because you don't understand it. So be resilient, dig in, find out what do I have to do to understand it? What do I have to do to overcome it? Is it going to affect me? Is it going to affect my family? Is it going to affect my future? If you think it is, do something. You know, this is kind of an aside, but it's not. One of my pet peeves is that people say, "Oh, my life is that, and they just whine and whine. If I had to recount through the course of my 78 years how many times I had to redesign my life because I wasn't headed in the path that I wanted. I wanted this, but I kept going like this. And I go, whoop, stop. Okay, now we're back on course and do it again. I had to redesign it.
Yeah.
People don't give themselves permission to change. So they just keep going down that same path. And eventually they're going to get to a point where they feel beaten down and they feel like, oh, this is terrible. I have a terrible life.
Oh.
Well, that's when they need resilience. They need to look around and say, um, hey, what can I do? And that's when you begin, that's that trial and error piece. That's when
Yeah,
you begin
of
to look
course.
at resilience differently.
Yeah, and it's really important to really adapt to that, and also to realize that you go through different changes in life. You have to change. You change constantly. So then you have to really. And now we're gonna go into an era where we need to change even faster. And then you have to have that resilience in you. So I have some final thoughts here before I want to give you the final words, because I really love this idea about Tiny Tail Land, and I have some questions for you about that, about how we're going to do in the future,
Okay.
to really make something out of this, because I know people have different school systems around the globe. So what do you think about how we're going to make a policy change here to really put that on the record that we need to focus on this as one of the goals in education?
Okay. I want you to swear that I didn't coach you on this before I answered that question. I didn't coach you
No,
to
I
ask this
didn't.
question, did I? 2 days ago, we dropped the price of our educational products from $30 to 10. $30 to 10.
Oh, wow, that's a good development. Great.
So for $10 a class, you can have $10 per student, and each student gets a book. The teacher gets the teacher's edition, and then there's support materials and a poster. All of that's included for $10 per student. Now, most books cost $40 to $70 per student.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get to every child. That's where the question comes in. We're trying to get to every child in the world.
Yeah.
I've been blessed to have traveled the world 25 times or more. I kind of lost count. And I've been to the poorest of countries and I've been to the wealthiest of countries. I've sat with kings and queens and sitting presidents and kids that never knew anything except to get food out of a pile of trash. Now, there's a way to change things, and it's through education. And we start with the youngest of kids.
Yeah. Great. And then we have to go to that cross-sectional collaboration also, because we have to align school with the business and communities and home. And that is what this does.
Yeah.
That's one of the goals for this tiny
Right.
tech as well.
That's correct. Part of our curriculum is that the teacher gives out materials that have to go home, that the home has to acknowledge them and then come back. So now we've involved the home and the school, which isn't done with a lot of materials. So we wanted to see a holistic package, if you will,
Yeah,
for this education. But that's what we're doing at Tiny Tales.
that's great. And do we have some final words here, DR, that you want to give the viewers?
You know, it's been said a lot, particularly by my generation. Kids are they're the future. There's That's where it's going. The kids are the future. And then we do nothing to invest in them. That's the saddest part. We pay our teachers less. We we just give them nothing but grief if they even say, "Don't do that," to our child. Oh my gosh, you upset his little psyche. Everything that we're trying to do in education, parents are doing their best to thwart that. That makes it even more difficult. But we do know this. We do know that kids in the second, third, and fourth grade, the kids that learn the best and they'll learn the quickest. So we think that's a place where we want to focus our efforts. And if I could say anything to anybody, you, one person, can make a difference. You absolutely can. With your teacher, with your child, you can make a difference if you take the time.
Yeah. Really great to have you on the show, DR. Thank you for those final words. And I would like to add to this that I think that those traits give happy people, and resilient people is happy people.
Yeah,
So really,
right.
if you're happy, you're going to be successful. So thank you for this episode with you. And for you viewers, if you resonate with this episode, just click on the link below and subscribe to this channel, because we're going to have more of these amazing episodes about the traits. And DR, you will be on the show more times.
I
I
will.
hope. You're very welcome. And thank you again for listening. And until next time. And thank you, DR, for taking your time today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Stina. Thank you so much.